The December morning arrived with a crisp bite in the air that made everyone's breath visible in small puffs of white. At Anmer Hall, the Cambridge family's Norfolk retreat, the house buzzed with the familiar energy that only Christmas preparations could bring. Princess Charlotte, now 8 years old with her signature confident smile and bright eyes, pressed her small face against the frost-covered window of the morning room, watching as groundskeepers prepared the estate for the holiday season. "Granny Carole is coming today," she announced to no one in particular, her voice carrying the excitement that only a child anticipating their grandmother's arrival could possess. Charlotte had always shared a special bond with her maternal grandmother, Carole Middleton. Unlike the formal protocols that governed many of her royal interactions, time with Granny Carole felt wonderfully normal and refreshingly genuine. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, looked up from where she sat sorting through Christmas cards that had arrived from around the world. Her mother's visits always brought a sense of warmth and familiarity that she treasured, especially during the holiday season when royal duties often felt particularly demanding. "She should be here any moment, darling. Why don't you help me with these cards while we wait?" But Charlotte's attention remained fixed on the window, her breath fogging the glass as she searched the long drive for any sign of her grandmother's approaching car. The relationship between Charlotte and Carole had blossomed into something truly special over the years. While Prince George often gravitated toward more active pursuits with his grandfather Michael, and little Prince Louis commanded attention simply by being the youngest, Charlotte found in Carole a kindred spirit who understood her unique position as the only daughter in the immediate royal family. The sound of car tires on gravel finally announced Carole's arrival. Charlotte immediately abandoned her post at the window and raced toward the front entrance, her footsteps echoing through the halls of Anmer Hall. Catherine followed at a more measured pace, smiling at her daughter's unbridled enthusiasm. The relationship between her mother and Charlotte had developed into something she found deeply moving to witness. It represented a bridge between the normal childhood Catherine had experienced and the extraordinary life her daughter was growing up in. When Carole stepped out of her car, Charlotte was already waiting by the door, practically vibrating with excitement. Carole, elegant as always but dressed casually in a cream-colored wool coat and practical boots, broke into a genuine smile at the sight of her granddaughter. At 68, Carole Middleton had learned to navigate the complexities of having a daughter married to the future king, but moments like these reminded her that family remained the most important foundation of all. "There's my Charlotte," Carole said warmly, opening her arms wide. Charlotte launched herself into the embrace with the complete trust that only exists between a grandmother and grandchild. The hug lasted longer than usual, and Catherine noticed how both Charlotte and her mother seemed to savor the moment. "I've been waiting and waiting," Charlotte said, pulling back to look at her grandmother's face. "Mummy said you might bring something special." Carole's eyes twinkled with the mischief that Charlotte had inherited. "Well, that depends on whether you've been good this year. Have you been helping your mummy and daddy?" "Oh yes, very good," Charlotte replied earnestly, then paused with the honesty that children possess. "Well, mostly good. I did have a small argument with George about the Christmas tree decorations, but we sorted it out." Catherine joined them in the entrance hall, kissing her mother on both cheeks. "How was the drive from Bucklebury?" "Lovely, though the roads are getting busy with Christmas shoppers," Carole replied, but her attention quickly returned to Charlotte, who was tugging gently on her coat sleeve. "Granny, come see the tree. We put it up yesterday, and Papa let me put the star on top, but I had to use a very tall ladder," Charlotte said, the words tumbling out in her eagerness to share everything at once. As they made their way toward the sitting room where the family's Christmas tree stood in magnificent splendor, Carole listened with the complete attention that made Charlotte feel like the most important person in the world. The tree, a magnificent Norwegian spruce that nearly touched the ceiling, was decorated with a carefully curated mixture of precious family ornaments and handmade decorations that the children had created over the years. "It's absolutely beautiful," Carole said, and Charlotte beamed with pride as though she had grown the tree herself. "Would you like some tea?" Catherine offered, but Charlotte quickly interjected. "Actually, Granny, I wanted to show you something first. Something private. Just us two." Charlotte's expression had shifted slightly, becoming more serious, more thoughtful. Carole looked questioningly at Catherine, who nodded with understanding. "Go ahead, you two. I'll put the kettle on and you can join me when you're ready." Charlotte took her grandmother's hand and led her up the main staircase toward her bedroom. The walls of the corridor were lined with family photographs, capturing moments from holidays, official events, and quiet family times. Carole had always been struck by how Catherine and William worked to maintain normalcy within the extraordinary circumstances of their lives. Charlotte's bedroom reflected her personality perfectly, a blend of princess elements and tomboyish practicality. Books were stacked on her nightstand, ranging from adventure stories to books about horses. A collection of toy horses occupied a special shelf, and photographs of family moments decorated her dresser. "Sit here," Charlotte said, patting the edge of her bed. Once Carole was settled, Charlotte went to her closet and emerged with a small wrapped package. "I made this for you," Charlotte said, suddenly shy. "It's not much, but I wanted it to be special." Carole carefully unwrapped the gift, her movements deliberate and respectful of the obvious care Charlotte had put into the wrapping. Inside was a small, hand-sewn lavender sachet. The stitching was uneven in places, clearly the work of young hands, but the effort and love were unmistakable. "I picked the lavender from our garden at Kensington Palace," Charlotte explained, watching her grandmother's face carefully. "And I learned to sew it myself. Well, Maria helped me a little bit with the difficult parts, but I did most of it myself." Carole held the sachet gently, bringing it to her nose to smell the delicate fragrance. "Charlotte, this is absolutely lovely. The most thoughtful gift I could imagine. Do you really like it?" Charlotte asked, her voice carrying a note of uncertainty that reminded Carole how much her approval meant to her granddaughter. "I don't just like it, darling. I treasure it. And, do you know why it's so special?" Charlotte shook her head, waiting for the explanation. "Because you made it with your own hands, thinking of me. That makes it more precious than anything money could buy." Carole pulled Charlotte close to her side. "But there's something else that makes this moment special." "What's that?" "The fact that you wanted to give it to me privately, just between us. That tells me you understand that some of the most meaningful moments happen when it's just family, just people who love each other." Charlotte nodded seriously, as though her grandmother had articulated something she had felt but couldn't quite express. "Sometimes I like the quiet moments best. When it's just us, without cameras or people watching." The honesty in Charlotte's voice touched Carole deeply. At 8 years old, Charlotte was already showing remarkable awareness of her public role while expressing a very natural desire for genuine, private connections. "That's very wise, Charlotte. Those quiet moments are indeed the most precious." Carole tucked a strand of Charlotte's hair behind her ear. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course. When your mummy was about your age, she felt the same way sometimes. She loved big family gatherings and celebrations, but her favorite times were often the quiet ones, when we would bake together in the kitchen, or read stories before bed, or just talk about whatever was on her mind." Charlotte's eyes brightened with interest. "Really? What kind of things did Mummy think about when she was little?" "Oh, all sorts of things. She wondered about fairness, about why some people had more than others. She loved stories about brave girls who helped their families and communities. And she always cared deeply about the people she loved." "That sounds like Mummy now," Charlotte observed with the clear-eyed perception that children often possess. "Yes, it does. And, you know what? I see many of those same qualities in you." Charlotte considered this seriously. "Do you think I'll be like Mummy when I grow up?" It was a loaded question, and Carole understood the layers of meaning behind it. Charlotte was asking not just about personality traits, but about her future role, her path in life, the enormous responsibilities that would one day be hers. "I think you'll be exactly who you're meant to be," Carole said carefully. "You'll be Charlotte, brave, thoughtful, caring Charlotte. And, whatever that looks like, it will be exactly right." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, Charlotte leaning against her grandmother's side. Through the window, they could see the afternoon light beginning to shift, casting long shadows across the Norfolk countryside. "Granny?" Charlotte said eventually. "Yes, darling? I'm glad you're here for Christmas. It makes everything feel more special." Carole kissed the top of Charlotte's head. I'm glad I'm here too. And I'm going to keep your beautiful lavender sachet in my jewelry box, so I'll think of you every morning when I get ready. Promise? I promise. A gentle knock on the door interrupted their moment. Charlotte? Granny? Tea is ready if you'd like to join us, Catherine's voice called from the hallway. Coming, Mummy, Charlotte replied, but she made no immediate move to get up. Instead, she turned to face her grandmother directly. Granny, can we have more times like this? Just us talking? As many as you'd like, sweetheart. Whenever you need someone to listen, or if you just want to talk about anything at all, I'm always here for you. Charlotte smiled, the kind of peaceful, satisfied smile that comes from feeling truly understood and valued. She slipped her hand into Carole's as they made their way downstairs to join the rest of the family for tea. As they descended the stairs together, Carole reflected on the precious gift of this relationship. In a life that would inevitably be filled with public scrutiny, formal obligations, and extraordinary pressures, Charlotte would need people who loved her simply for who she was. Today's quiet exchange had reinforced Carole's commitment to being that constant, loving presence in her granddaughter's life. The afternoon stretched ahead of them, full of Christmas preparations, family time, and the warm chaos that comes with holiday gatherings. But, for both Charlotte and Carole, this private moment would remain the highlight of the day, a reminder that love, expressed simply and genuinely, remains the most powerful force in any family, royal or otherwise. The following morning brought with it the kind of snow that transforms the English countryside into a winter wonderland. Charlotte woke to find her bedroom windows frosted with delicate ice patterns, and, beyond them, a world blanketed in pristine white. The grounds of Anmer Hall stretched out like a fairy tale landscape, with snow-covered trees creating magical silhouettes against the pale morning sky. She could hear movement downstairs, the gentle sounds of breakfast being prepared, quiet conversations, and the occasional bark from Orla, the family's cocker spaniel. But what drew Charlotte immediately to her window was the sight of a familiar figure walking slowly through the garden, wrapped in a warm coat and leaving a trail of footprints in the fresh snow. Granny Carole was up early, as she often was, taking what she called her thinking walk. Charlotte had learned over the years that these morning walks were when her grandmother processed her thoughts, planned her day, and simply enjoyed the peace that came with being alone in nature. Quickly pulling on her dressing gown and slippers, Charlotte made her way downstairs as quietly as possible. She retrieved her winter coat from the mudroom, slipped on her Wellington boots, and stepped outside into the crisp morning air. The snow crunched softly under her feet as she followed the path her grandmother had taken through the garden. Carole was standing near the old oak tree at the edge of the formal gardens, her breath visible in small puffs as she gazed out over the snow-covered landscape. "Good morning, early bird," Carole said without turning around, somehow having sensed Charlotte's approach. "How did you know it was me?" Charlotte asked, coming to stand beside her grandmother. "Grandmothers have special powers," Carole replied with a smile, wrapping her arm around Charlotte's shoulders. "Also, I heard you trying to be quiet in the mudroom. You're getting better at stealth, but the floorboard by the coat hooks still creaks." Charlotte giggled, leaning into her grandmother's warmth. "It's so beautiful out here. Everything looks different with snow." "It does indeed. Snow has a way of making even familiar places feel magical and new." Carole looked down at Charlotte's face, pink from the cold air. "Couldn't sleep? I woke up and saw you from my window. I wanted to see what you were thinking about on your walk." It was such a Charlotte thing to say, direct, curious, and showing genuine interest in the inner lives of the people she loved. Carole had always been impressed by her granddaughter's emotional intelligence and her desire to understand what made people tick. "I was thinking about Christmas mornings," Carole said thoughtfully. "About how they've changed over the years, and how they've stayed the same." "What do you mean?" Carole considered how to explain the complex feelings that came with watching generations grow and change. "Well, when your mummy was little, Christmas morning was quite different. We lived in a much smaller house then, and everything was simpler. But the feeling of Christmas morning, that excitement, that sense of magic and possibility, that's exactly the same." Charlotte nodded seriously, as though cataloging this information for future reference. "Do you miss the old Christmases?" I treasure them, Carole replied carefully. But I don't miss them in a sad way. I think of them as the foundation that made all the wonderful Christmases that followed possible. Your mummy learned about love and family and tradition in that small house, and now she's creating new traditions with you and your brothers. Will I do that someday? Create traditions for my children? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications about Charlotte's future role and responsibilities. Carole chose her words carefully, understanding that Charlotte was beginning to grapple with questions about her destiny that most 8-year-olds never had to consider. I believe you will, Carole said gently. And I think you'll be wonderful at it because you understand what matters most about traditions. What's that? That they're about bringing people together, making them feel loved and secure, and creating moments that people will remember with happiness for the rest of their lives. They continued walking through the garden, their footsteps creating a new path in the unmarked snow. Charlotte picked up a handful of snow and examined it closely, marveling at the intricate patterns of individual snowflakes before they melted against her warm gloves. Granny, can I ask you something that might sound silly? Nothing you ask me is silly, darling. Do you think I'm normal? I mean, I know my life isn't normal, but do you think I'm a normal person inside? Carole stopped walking and turned to face Charlotte directly. This was clearly a question that had been weighing on her granddaughter's mind, and it deserved a thoughtful response. Charlotte, you are absolutely a normal person inside. You have the same feelings, the same needs for love and understanding, the same curiosity about the world that any child has. What's different is some of the circumstances around your life, but circumstances don't change who you are at your core. Sometimes I worry that people think of me as just the princess instead of just Charlotte. It was a remarkably mature concern for someone so young, and it broke Carole's heart a little to realize that Charlotte was already aware of how public perception might overshadow her individual identity. Can I tell you a secret? Carole asked. Charlotte nodded eagerly. The people who really matter will always see Charlotte first. Yes, you're a princess, and that's part of who you are and always will be. But, to your family, to your real friends, to everyone who loves you, you're Charlotte first, funny, smart, kind, sometimes stubborn Charlotte who loves horses and makes beautiful lavender sachets and asks thoughtful questions about life. Is that how you see me? That's exactly how I see you. When I look at you, I see my granddaughter who cares about fairness, who stands up for her brothers even when they annoy her, who notices when people are sad and wants to help them feel better. The princess part is just one aspect of all the wonderful things that make you who you are. Charlotte seemed to absorb this, her expression thoughtful. They had reached the edge of the garden where a small wooden bench sat beneath an apple tree. Despite the snow, they decided to sit for a moment, brushing off the wooden seat before settling down. Granny, what was the best Christmas present you ever got when you were little? Carole smiled at the question, grateful for Charlotte's ability to shift the conversation to lighter topics when deeper discussions became too heavy. Oh, that's easy. When I was about your age, maybe a bit younger, I desperately wanted a dollhouse. Not just any dollhouse, but a specific one I had seen in a shop window when reading. It was beautiful, 3 stories with tiny furniture and even tinier people. I thought about that dollhouse constantly. Did you get it? I did, on Christmas morning. My parents must have saved for months to buy it. When I saw it under the tree, I burst into tears because I was so happy and surprised. Do you still have it? I do, actually. It's in the attic at Buckleberry. I kept thinking that someday I might have a granddaughter who would enjoy it. Charlotte's eyes lit up with interest. Really? Could I see it sometime? Would you like to? I could bring it down from the attic next time you visit. Oh yes, please. I love dollhouses. I have one at Kensington Palace, but it's quite modern. I'd love to see an old-fashioned one. As they sat talking about dollhouses and childhood dreams, Catherine appeared at the edge of the garden, wrapped in her own winter coat and holding 2 steaming mugs. I thought you two might like some hot chocolate, she called, making her way carefully across the snowy ground. Mummy! We were just talking about Granny's dollhouse from when she was little, Charlotte said excitedly as Catherine approached. "Oh, the famous dollhouse," Catherine said with a smile, handing each of them a mug. "I spent countless hours playing with that when I was growing up. Granny always let me rearrange all the furniture and create elaborate stories about the tiny family who lived there. Could we all play with it together when we visit Bucklebury?" Charlotte asked hopefully. Carole and Catherine exchanged a look filled with warmth and understanding. These were the moments that mattered most, 3 generations of women, sitting in a snowy garden, planning simple pleasures and sharing stories. "I think that sounds like a wonderful idea," Carole said. "We could even add some new furniture to it. I saw some beautiful miniature pieces at a craft fair recently." As they sat sipping hot chocolate and planning future dollhouse adventures, Charlotte felt a deep sense of contentment. This was what she loved most about time with Granny Carole, the way ordinary moments became special simply because they were sharing them together. "What time does everyone else wake up usually?" Charlotte asked, glancing back toward the house. "George and Louis should be stirring soon," Catherine replied. "And your father mentioned wanting to take everyone sledding this morning if the snow holds." "That sounds brilliant," Charlotte said enthusiastically, then paused. "But could we finish our conversation first? I like having quiet time with Granny before the day gets busy." Catherine felt a surge of pride at her daughter's emotional awareness and her clear articulation of what she needed. At 8, Charlotte was already learning to identify and ask for what nourished her emotionally. "Of course, darling. Take all the time you need." As Catherine headed back toward the house, Charlotte and Carole settled more comfortably on their bench, despite the cold. There was something about the peaceful morning, the pristine snow, and the comfortable silence between them that neither wanted to rush. "Granny?" "Yes, sweetheart? I hope when I grow up, I remember to make time for quiet conversations like this with people I love." Carole felt her heart swell with emotion at Charlotte's words. "I think you will, Charlotte. I think you'll be very good at taking care of the people in your life." "How do you know?" "Because you're already doing it. Right now, at 8 years old, you're thinking about what makes people feel loved and valued. That's not something you learn from books or lessons, it's something that comes from inside, from who you are as a person." They finished their hot chocolate in comfortable silence, watching as the sun climbed higher in the sky and began to make the snow sparkle like thousands of tiny diamonds. Soon, they would head inside to join the rest of the family for breakfast, and the day would fill with the happy chaos of Christmas preparations and winter activities. But, for now, they sat together in the peaceful garden, grandmother and granddaughter, creating another quiet moment that would join the collection of treasured memories they were building together, one conversation at a time. Christmas Eve afternoon arrived with a flurry of activity that filled every corner of Anmer Hall. The Wales family had gathered together for their traditional celebration, and the house buzzed with the kind of organized chaos that only comes with holidays and multiple generations under one roof. George and Louis raced through the corridors, their excitement barely contained as they counted down the hours until Christmas morning. William had enlisted them in various important tasks that were really just designed to channel their energy constructively. In the large kitchen, preparations for Christmas dinner were well underway. Catherine worked alongside the household staff, her hands covered in flour from the batch of mince pies she was preparing. The kitchen filled with the warm scents of cinnamon, nutmeg, and vanilla, the fragrant promise of tomorrow's feast. Carole found herself naturally gravitating toward helping with the preparations, though she was officially a guest. Old habits from years of family entertaining died hard, and she couldn't resist lending a hand where needed. She was arranging holly and ivy around the mantelpieces when she noticed Charlotte sitting quietly in the corner of the drawing room, a book in her lap but her attention clearly elsewhere. While her brothers channeled their pre-Christmas energy into racing around the house, Charlotte had chosen a different approach to managing her excitement. She sat curled in the window seat of the drawing room, ostensibly reading, but Carole could see that her granddaughter's mind was elsewhere. The book, a story about a girl who discovered she could talk to horses, remained open to the same page it had been on 20 minutes earlier. "Penny for your thoughts?" Carole asked gently, settling into the chair nearest to Charlotte's window seat. Charlotte looked up, seeming almost surprised to find herself back in the present moment. "Oh, hello, Granny. I was just thinking. About anything in particular?" Charlotte closed her book and shifted to face her grandmother more directly. At 8, she had developed the habit of really looking at people when she spoke to them, giving them her full attention in a way that many adults found both endearing and slightly unnerving. About tomorrow, Charlotte said simply. About Christmas morning and opening presents and having breakfast with everyone. Are you excited? Carole asked, though she suspected there was more complexity to Charlotte's feelings than simple excitement. Yes, very excited. But, also. Charlotte paused, searching for words to express something she wasn't entirely sure she understood herself. Also a bit overwhelmed, I think. It was a remarkably mature observation from someone so young, and Carole felt a familiar surge of admiration for her granddaughter's emotional intelligence. Charlotte had always been introspective, but lately, she seemed to be developing an even deeper awareness of her own feelings and reactions. Can you tell me more about what feels overwhelming? Charlotte considered the question seriously. Well, there's so much happening, and everyone is so excited, and I love it, but sometimes I feel like I need to be excited in exactly the right way, if that makes sense. It made perfect sense to Carole, who understood that Charlotte was beginning to feel the weight of being watched, of having her reactions noted and potentially judged. Even in the privacy of family celebrations, Charlotte was becoming aware that her behavior might be observed and commented upon. It makes complete sense, Carole assured her. And, you know what? There's no right way to feel excited about Christmas. Some people show it by running around like George and Louis. Some people show it by getting very involved in the preparations like your mummy. And some people show it by sitting quietly and thinking about all the wonderful things that are coming. Charlotte's expression brightened slightly. So it's okay that I don't want to run around the house right now? It's perfectly okay. In fact, it shows that you understand something very important about anticipation. What's that? That sometimes the thinking and imagining and looking forward to something can be just as enjoyable as the thing itself. You're savoring the anticipation, and that's a lovely way to experience excitement. Charlotte nodded, looking relieved. I was worried that I wasn't being excited enough, or that I was being too serious about Christmas. Oh, darling, there's no such thing as being too serious about Christmas, especially when being serious means you're thinking deeply about what makes it special. From the kitchen came the sound of Louis squealing with delight about something, followed by William's patient voice explaining why he couldn't actually help flip the pancakes that were being prepared for tomorrow's breakfast. Charlotte smiled at the familiar sounds of her family, but made no move to join the commotion. Granny, can I ask you something about growing up? Of course. Did you always know what kind of person you wanted to be when you grew up? Carole paused, recognizing the weight behind the question. Charlotte was already beginning to grapple with questions about identity and purpose that most children wouldn't face for years to come, if ever. You know, when I was your age, I mostly thought about what I wanted to do when I grew up, not necessarily who I wanted to be. I thought about jobs and activities, but I didn't spend much time thinking about character or values. What changed that? Becoming a mother, mostly. When I had your mummy and your uncles, I realized that who I was as a person mattered much more than what I did for work. I wanted to be the kind of person who would help my children become good, happy, capable people. Charlotte absorbed this thoughtfully. Sometimes I think about what my job will be when I grow up, and it feels very big and important and a bit scary. Carole's heart ached for her granddaughter, who was already carrying the weight of future responsibilities that would have overwhelmed many adults. Can I tell you a secret about that? Yes, please. Your job, whatever it ends up being, will be much easier if you focus first on being the kind of person you want to be. If you're kind, thoughtful, curious, and caring, which you already are, then you'll be good at whatever role life brings you. Do you really think so? I know so. I've watched you with your brothers, with your friends, with the people who work here at Anmer Hall. You treat everyone with respect and kindness. You notice when people need help or when they're feeling sad. You ask good questions and you listen to the answers. Those qualities will serve you well in any role. Charlotte seemed to consider this carefully. Sometimes I worry that I won't be good enough for whatever I'm supposed to do when I grow up. the vulnerability in her voice nearly broke Carole's heart. 8 years old, and already carrying the weight of expectations that she barely understood but somehow felt responsible for meeting. "Charlotte, look at me," Carole said gently. When Charlotte met her eyes, Carole continued, "You are already more than good enough. You are exactly the right person to grow up to be you. There has never been another Charlotte exactly like you, and there never will be again. That's not scary, that's wonderful. But what if I make mistakes? Then, you'll learn from them and become even better. Making mistakes is how people grow and improve. Even grown-ups make mistakes all the time. Do you make mistakes?" Carole laughed gently. "Oh my goodness, yes. Just last week I completely forgot about a commitment I had made to help with a charity event. I had to make several embarrassing phone calls to sort it out." "What did you do?" "I apologized sincerely, I found a way to make it right, and I put better systems in place so it wouldn't happen again." That's what you do with mistakes, you acknowledge them, you fix what you can, and you learn from them. Charlotte seemed fascinated by this glimpse into the reality of adult life, where even grandmothers made mistakes and had to figure out how to handle them. "Granny, do you think Mummy ever worried about being good enough when she was little?" "I think your mummy worried about many of the same things you worry about. She wanted to do well in school, she wanted her friends to like her, she wanted to make her family proud. But she didn't have to worry about quite the same kinds of responsibilities that you're already thinking about." "Was her life easier?" It was a complex question that touched on the fundamental differences between Catherine's childhood and Charlotte's. Carole chose her words carefully. "In some ways, yes. She had more privacy, fewer people watching and commenting on her choices. But, in other ways, your life has advantages that hers didn't have. You have a deeper understanding of service and purpose, you're learning about different cultures and countries, you're developing confidence in public situations that will serve you well." "So it's different but equal?" "That's a very wise way to put it. Different challenges, different advantages, but equal in terms of what matters most: being loved, being supported, having opportunities to grow and learn." From the hallway came the sound of William calling for everyone to gather in the sitting room for their traditional Christmas Eve story reading. Charlotte looked toward the door, then back at her grandmother. "Should we go join them?" "In a moment. But first, I want to give you something." Carole reached into her handbag and pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook with Charlotte's initials embossed in gold on the cover. "This is for your thoughts," Carole explained. "I noticed that you spend time thinking about important things, and sometimes it helps to write those thoughts down. You don't have to share what you write with anyone unless you want to. It's just for you, to help you remember your ideas and feelings." Charlotte accepted the notebook reverently, running her fingers over the soft leather cover. "It's beautiful. Did you have one when you were little?" "I did, starting when I was about your age. My grandmother gave it to me, and it became one of my most treasured possessions. Writing in it helped me understand my own thoughts better." "What kinds of things did you write about?" "Oh, everything. Things that made me happy, things that worried me, ideas I had about how to solve problems, descriptions of special days like this one. Whatever was in my heart or on my mind." Charlotte hugged the notebook to her chest. "Thank you, Granny. I love it." "You're very welcome, sweetheart. And remember, there's no right or wrong way to use it. Just write whatever feels true to you." The sound of George's voice calling Charlotte. "Granny." Story time, finally, drew them from their quiet corner. As they made their way toward the sitting room to join the family tradition, Charlotte slipped her hand into Carole's. "Granny?" "Yes, darling? I'm glad we had this talk. It makes Christmas Eve feel even more special." "I'm glad too, Charlotte. These conversations are some of my very favorite parts of spending time with you." As they entered the sitting room where the rest of the family was gathering around the fireplace, Charlotte felt a sense of peace settling over her. The overwhelming feelings from earlier had shifted into something more manageable, more positive. Tomorrow would still be big and exciting and wonderful, but now it felt less daunting and more like a gift to be unwrapped and enjoyed. Christmas morning arrived with the peculiar quality of light that comes with fresh snow and winter sunshine. Charlotte woke naturally, without an alarm, her internal clock somehow knowing that this was the day they had all been anticipating. The house was still quiet, that special stillness that exists in the early hours of Christmas morning before the celebration begins. She lay in bed for a few moments, listening to the familiar sounds of Anmerhall waking up. Somewhere downstairs, she could hear the gentle movements of staff beginning preparations for the day. Outside her window, birds were singing their morning songs, seemingly unbothered by the cold that had settled over Norfolk during the night. Charlotte reached for the leather notebook that Carole had given her the evening before, which she had placed carefully on her nightstand before going to sleep. Opening it to the first blank page, she picked up the pen that had been tucked inside the cover and began to write in her careful, precise handwriting. Christmas morning. I can hear everyone starting to wake up. George just went to the bathroom and tried to be quiet but wasn't really. I feel excited but also peaceful. Yesterday Granny and I had the most wonderful talks. I want to remember them always. Writing felt natural and satisfying, a way of capturing thoughts that might otherwise slip away in the excitement of the day ahead. She was just finishing her first entry when a gentle knock came at her door. "Come in," she called softly. To her surprise, it was Carole who peeked around the door, already dressed in a beautiful burgundy wool dress and carrying 2 cups of tea. "Good morning, birthday girl," Carole said with a smile, using the traditional family greeting for Christmas morning. "Good morning, Granny. You're up early. I wanted to catch you before the chaos begins. I thought we might have a few quiet minutes together to start this special day." Charlotte scooted over in her bed to make room for her grandmother, who settled beside her with the practiced ease of someone who had shared many morning conversations with grandchildren over the years. "I was just writing in my notebook," Charlotte said, showing Carole the open page. "About yesterday and this morning. How does it feel to write your thoughts down?" "Different than I expected. Clearer, somehow. Like writing them makes them more real and more mine at the same time." Carole nodded with understanding. "That's exactly how I felt when I started keeping a journal. There's something powerful about seeing your thoughts in your own handwriting." They sipped their tea in comfortable silence, watching the winter morning grow brighter outside Charlotte's window. In the distance, they could see the grounds of Anmerhall stretching toward the horizon, everything covered in pristine snow that sparkled in the early sunlight. "Granny, can I ask you something about family traditions?" "Of course, darling. How do you know which traditions to keep and which ones to change as families grow?" It was such a thoughtful question, revealing Charlotte's awareness that traditions weren't fixed things but living practices that evolved with time and circumstances. "That's a wonderful question, and I think the answer is different for every family," Carole began thoughtfully. "But, in general, I think you keep the traditions that bring people joy and help them feel connected to each other, and you let go of the ones that feel forced or outdated. What about starting new traditions?" "New traditions usually grow naturally out of what a family enjoys doing together. Like our Christmas Eve conversations, those weren't planned as a tradition, but they become one because we both value them." Charlotte considered this. "So traditions are really about what makes people feel loved and connected?" "Exactly. The specific activities matter less than the feelings they create and the memories they help build." From down the hall came the unmistakable sound of Louis waking up with his usual Christmas morning enthusiasm, a series of excited exclamations followed by footsteps running toward his parents' room. "Sounds like our quiet morning is about to become a busy one," Carole observed with amusement. "I'm ready for it now," Charlotte said, and she genuinely was. The peaceful start to the day with her grandmother had given her the emotional foundation she needed to fully enjoy the celebration ahead. "Before we join the circus downstairs, I have something for you," Carole said, reaching into the small bag she had brought with her. "But presents are for after breakfast," Charlotte protested gently, referencing the family rule about Christmas gift-giving. "This isn't exactly a present. It's more of a practical item," Carole said with a mischievous smile that Charlotte recognized as the same expression she often wore when she was planning something special. Carole pulled out a small, elegant pen with Charlotte's initials engraved on the side. "This is for your journal. A proper pen for a proper writer." Charlotte accepted the pen with reverence, understanding immediately that this was more than just a writing instrument. It was a symbol of being taken seriously as someone whose thoughts and observations had value. "It's beautiful, Granny." "Thank you. Every important writer needs a good pen. And I have a feeling you're going to write many important things over the years." The sound of multiple footsteps in the hallway indicated that the rest of the family was officially awake and beginning to gather. Charlotte could hear George's voice explaining something excitedly to William, and Catherine's gentle responses as she helped Louis get ready for the day. "Shall we go join them?" Carole asked. "Yes, but first." Charlotte opened her notebook again and quickly added to her morning entry, "Granny gave me a beautiful pen and called me a proper writer. I think this is going to be the most wonderful Christmas." As they made their way downstairs together, Charlotte felt a deep sense of gratitude for these quiet moments with her grandmother. In a life that was increasingly filled with public appearances and royal protocols, these private conversations felt like treasures, reminders that beneath all the formality and expectation, she was simply a beloved granddaughter spending Christmas with her family. The sitting room was already alive with activity when they arrived. George and Louis were examining the presents under the tree with the focused attention of investigators, careful not to touch but clearly cataloging every wrapped package. William was starting a fire in the fireplace, and Catherine was arranging serving dishes for the breakfast that would precede gift opening. "There are our early birds," William said warmly as Charlotte and Carole entered the room. "We were wondering where you two had gotten to." "Just having some grandmother-granddaughter time," Carole replied, winking at Charlotte. The morning unfolded with all the joy and gentle chaos that defines family Christmas celebrations. Breakfast was eaten with barely contained excitement, presents were opened with appropriate ceremony and genuine appreciation, and the house filled with laughter and conversation. But, throughout the celebration, Charlotte found herself treasuring the quiet moments as much as the exciting ones. When she caught her grandmother's eye across the room as George demonstrated his new football skills in the sitting room, when Carole helped her set up the new art supplies she had received, when they worked together in the kitchen preparing vegetables for dinner, these moments felt like extensions of their early morning conversation. As the afternoon wore on and the family settled into the peaceful lull that follows the morning excitement, Charlotte found herself back in her favorite window seat, her new journal open in her lap. She was writing about the day, trying to capture not just what had happened but how it had felt. Carole found her there as the winter light was beginning to fade, settled comfortably with her pen and notebook. "How's the writing going?" Carole asked, settling into the nearby chair. "Really well. I'm trying to write about how Christmas feels, not just what we did. That's the mark of a true writer, being interested in feelings and meanings, not just events." Charlotte looked up from her writing. "Granny, I wanted to thank you for this weekend. Not just for the presents, but for all our talks and quiet times together." "You don't need to thank me, sweetheart. Spending time with you, really talking with you, is one of my greatest pleasures. It's mine too. And I've been thinking about what you said about traditions and families growing. Oh, I hope that when I grow up and have my own family someday, I'll remember to make time for quiet conversations like ours. I want to be the kind of person who notices when someone needs to talk or just needs someone to listen." Carole felt her eyes fill with tears at the wisdom and compassion in Charlotte's words. At 8 years old, her granddaughter was already thinking about how to nurture and care for future generations. "I have absolutely no doubt that you will be exactly that kind of person," Carole said softly. "You already are." As the Christmas afternoon settled around them, grandmother and granddaughter sat together in comfortable companionship, Charlotte writing in her journal while Carole worked on some embroidery she had brought with her. The sounds of family life continued around them, George and Louis playing with their new toys, William and Catherine discussing plans for Boxing Day, the gentle sounds of a house full of people who loved each other. Later, when Charlotte looked back on this Christmas, she would remember many wonderful moments. The joy on Louis's face when he opened his new toy train set, the way George had carefully helped her adjust the saddle on her new toy horse, the delicious dinner they had all prepared together, the evening games and stories by the fireplace. But the moments she would treasure most, the ones she would write about in detail in her journal and carry with her always, would be the quiet conversations with Granny Carole. The gentle wisdom shared, the feeling of being truly seen and understood, the sense that her thoughts and feelings mattered to someone she respected and loved. As she closed her journal that evening and prepared for bed, Charlotte felt certain that this Christmas had given her something precious, not just memories, but a deeper understanding of what family love looked like when expressed through patient attention, thoughtful conversation, and the simple gift of being present with each other. In the years to come, as Charlotte navigated the complexities of growing up in the public eye while maintaining her sense of self, she would often think back to these Christmas conversations with her grandmother. They had planted seeds of wisdom and self-understanding that would grow and flourish as Charlotte developed into the confident, compassionate young woman she was destined to become. And Carole, watching her granddaughter settle into sleep on Christmas night, felt deeply grateful for the opportunity to play a role in nurturing Charlotte's emotional and spiritual development. In a world that would often focus on Charlotte's public role and royal duties, Carole was committed to ensuring that Charlotte never forgot she was loved simply for being herself, thoughtful, curious, kind Charlotte who asked important questions and deserved to have them answered with the care and respect they merited. The Christmas weekend had created new memories and strengthened the bonds between 3 generations of remarkable women, each learning from the others, each contributing something precious to their shared family story.